Thank you for doing closed captioning. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first session. This is Death Journaling in Real Life, and it's my pre-launch lead up to July 1st, which is the official book birthday for the Death Doula's Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared, which I am so thrilled to share with the world. And I know some people have gotten their early copies. They have already arrived, which I'm thrilled about. It seems like just a fun surprise. And I've gotten messages from people, emails, I've gotten social media messages, I've gotten photos, and it's just so fun for me to see it in the hands of readers. So thank you all. And I have one of my earliest readers here with me, my guest, Dr. Karen Wyatt. And she was someone who read a pre-print version of the manuscript very early on and gave me some really wonderful feedback. And I'm going to do a brief intro of you, Karen, off the cuff. I don't have anything in front of me, but because I've known you for a long time, the hats that I'm most familiar with that you wear are that you are a retired hospice and family medicine physician, and that you run End of Life University, which is an incredible resource, just packed with information, packed with hundreds of episodes of your podcast, which I can let people know that as I was painting this room that I'm in right now for my daughter when she was in here and when this was her bedroom, I listened to countless episodes of that podcast while I was painting, just one after another, and I just love them all. You have a way of choosing such fascinating people, and then as a podcast host, you can just pull these stories, these anecdotes, and these, tidbits of wisdom that are fascinating for all of us to listen to. So thank you for that. Anything else that you want to share about your bio and who you are and the hats that you proudly wear?
Well, that kind of sums up what I'm doing right now, primarily the podcast, but I'm also a new grandmother. And so that's a whole new, an entirely new role that I'm really loving right now. And I have one grandchild who turns one in July and another grandchild on the way in November. And so it's so interesting to get to, that's a different hat, and I'm loving it. And soaking up every moment of it that I can.
Amazing. And also, that definitely tops anything else, I'm sure, but you're also a published author as well.
Yes, and I am trying to write some more books. I'm working on books, but a little bit divided in my time, so I don't spend as much time writing as I probably should. So it's a slow process.
It is a process for sure. I have not done a ton of writing since finishing the manuscript, and I have a book that it's another kind of shorter guidebook similar to Cultivating the Doula Heart that is sitting on the back burner waiting for me. And it knows, and I know, that right now my full attention and love and energy is going into sending out this book into the world. But it is interesting feeling that sort of itch to create and to write. And because for me, I imagine it's similar for you and other people who hear, when you're creating and when you're writing, it's such a clarifying, cathartic experience. It really helps me figure out how I feel about the things that have happened to me, the things that I have witnessed, and the things that I wonder about.
That's so very true. And I've gotten the bug in the last few years to also write some fiction. And I have a couple of novels I've been working on, but partly because I know, lots of us like reading nonfiction books, and we love reading about end of life issues and death, dying, and grief. But there's a whole group of people in our society who are still reluctant and nervous about picking up a nonfiction book that tells the truth about death and dying, but they might read a fiction book that gradually eases them into some of these topics, in a way that they, maybe they get hooked on the story and get introduced to some of these ideas. So I'm trying my hand at it. We'll see how that goes.
Thank you. I think that that's wonderful. And I I do have a tendency to read a lot of nonfiction, including memoir. I think reading people's stories and their experiences is so powerful, but I do appreciate a fiction book every once in a while. I have to kind of remind myself or be nudged by somebody else to expand my reading list. And it's amazing how, it's almost like when death and grief aren't a part of a fiction book, it's almost like there's something missing because it is part of life. And some authors are too nervous to include those aspects of living. And when it is included and it's done well, it's really incredibly moving. So I can't wait to see what you come up with. That's wonderful.
We'll see, hopefully in between grandmothering time and the podcast, I'll work on it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So our origin story of connection, I think, is really interesting. I heard about you first when we were leading up to a local gerontology conference here in Vermont, and you were chosen to be the keynote speaker. And I was going to be leading workshops at that particular conference. I've been to that conference a bunch of times and I've led different workshops, but I think I was doing my role and scope of the doula breakout sessions during the day. And so I was getting the updates about planning and everything. And I saw your name and I said, oh, I wonder who this person is. And so I Googled you and I found your website and I loved what I saw. And I thought to myself, well, I might as well just reach out and see if she's able to connect. She's probably really busy while she's here. I'm not sure how, I wasn't sure how long you were going to be staying, but I thought it was worth a try. So I reached out and I said, hey, I'd love to pick you up from the airport. Love to go out for a meal. If you're available, let me know. And you said, sure, that sounds great. And I remember I was having like vehicle troubles. This was a while back. So this was what, 2018, maybe?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's my guess. And I was having some car troubles, but anyway, we ended up meeting for dinner and I just had such a lovely time talking with you. And you have such a warm, grounded, centered energy. And then loved hearing your keynote, and then I felt connected with you ever since. And we have been emailing and stayed in touch and with different projects. And I've had the great honor of being on your podcast now 3 times. And so, yeah, I'm just so glad that the fates aligned for us to cross paths way back when.
Yeah, same here. For me as a traveler, it was really nice to be met at the airport and not have to call for an Uber to take me to a hotel and eat dinner by myself. And I was just delighted with our meeting. There was so much resonance between us and we just had such a great conversation. I kind of knew right away that you would be a friend for life. And I went to your breakout session while I was there, which was also really inspiring. So we have a mutual admiration society going on.
I love that. And I think it's so important that we recognize, the whole doula spirit is about compassion and it's about connection. And so when I'm able to connect with somebody else who's in this field, who's doing similar work in the sense of, trying to promote death literacy, trying to share stories that will bolster people's confidence and make them feel a little more prepared before they face something that could be quite intense, or as they're reeling from loss or a diagnosis or something like that. And then there's this sense of, we are working together toward a shared mission. And there's this collaborative spirit and this mutual support and admiration. It's just my favorite thing. And so that's exactly why I invited you to be part of this. And the rest of my guests for this week, you are those people that I just respect so much. And I have appreciated working alongside. And I know that there are a lot of people right here in this crowd that are doing similar work as well. And if you want to, put that in the chat. Let us know what you're up to. We've got people from healthcare here. We've got people who also have podcasts I'm seeing. I think maybe some death doulas that are practicing, some people who are working in hospice and palliative care, probably a range of humans that are all working toward this goal of connection and compassion. So feel free to share what you are up to in the world. And I want to put out together forward. I like that. Yeah, exactly. We need this. We need to come together for this. There's so much need right now for us to address. So thank you all for that. All right, so Karen, I wanted to talk a little bit about the death journaling book. So the Death Doula's Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared. My hope is that instead of me trying to share about the book, I would love to get other people's perspectives, especially someone like yourself who has worked as a physician and who helps to educate current and upcoming physicians, someone who's worked in healthcare, someone who leads a podcast, someone who is a grandmother and a family person as well, like yourself. And I'm wondering if you can share how you think we can utilize and implement some of the exercises and approaches covered in the book.
Yeah, well, I think it's extremely helpful to have a workbook like this, because all the time I see posts and memes, about make sure you do your advanced directives, be sure and plan ahead for the end of life. But this book is so good at walking people through the process, not just of planning or just making decisions for the end of life, but preparing in advance and really thinking about how they're living life. And that's the thing that I think I learned right away as a hospice doctor from my patients, that the way you die in many ways depends on how you have chosen to live your life. And it inspired me to want to live this death-aware life always, but to also just pay attention to my inner life and how I feel about myself, how I treat other people, how I'm embracing what life brings to me, and how I'm exploring my own purpose in life. So I love that you've incorporated all of that into this workbook, and you start at the very beginning with just being alive and learning about the reality of death, and how do we incorporate that into our day-to-day life. So it's just so very helpful and such a good thing to suggest to people to start with right away. Anyone who's had a terminal diagnosis, or anyone who's in a situation where they're suddenly awakening to their own mortality and wanting information and needing to know more about it.
Thank you for that feedback. Yeah, I think many of us are working toward sharing these messages and having them resonate more upstream. So instead of just in the moment when someone is facing crisis and there's sort of no other way, then you've got to get through what feels completely impossible that's right in front of you. Hopefully having some of these conversations in advance and doing some of this thinking and planning and contemplating in advance of that, so that it doesn't feel quite as overwhelming. I mean, granted, there's no magical fix for that. If someone does receive a terminal diagnosis or someone close to them does, it can feel completely devastating and overwhelming still. And yet when we've had these conversations and we've done this planning and preparing, we've got more to work with. We have a little bit of a foundation. We're not starting from scratch, and we're not feeling so inundated with this sort of huge to-do list of like, well, who am I, and what do I want to do with my time, and what are my values, and what are my priorities, and what are my wishes, and what are my worries? Because honestly, in those moments of crisis and intensity, what's happening, what's unfolding is usually so pressing and requires all of our attention and energy that we have very little to spend in other ways, like doing our documents and thinking about our belongings and who we might want to leave things to, or final messages. Then the main inspiration for this book is my own death journal, and I'm looking at it on my bookshelf over there, which is a beautiful wooden casket made by Fiddlehead Caskets in Canada. They do gorgeous work, and it's a journal that my loved ones know about, and it's meant for my end of life. It's meant for either if it's expected and I'm ill, then they can turn to that and they could gather up some tips on how to care for me and support me and learn more about some of my wishes, or clarify their understanding of my wishes, because we have had conversations. Or if my death is sudden and unexpected, they can go to it in their time of grief, and they can hear my voice and they can find my messages and my wishes for them moving forward. So I really do hope to inspire more people to think about this sooner, maybe even when they're in good health or decent health, or in advance of chronic health conditions or a terminal diagnosis. But it often, I mean, we talk about it always feels too early until it's too late. And it's never too late to start. It's just that, you might not have quite as much capacity and bandwidth to do as much of this work.
One thing that personally I'm really inspired to work on, you have a section on decluttering, death decluttering, and having, after my mom died, having had to clean out her entire house in 2 weeks' time because we had a buyer that wanted the house right away. I realized right away, like, I have way too much stuff and I don't want my kids to have to spend that time going through everything that I have and trying to sort it out and figure out what to do with things. So I've been thinking, as I declutter, maybe I'll combine my decluttering with writing some letters to my kids, but I thought of, as I find things that really are genuine keepsakes, something I really cherish and value, that I would like my kids to consider keeping it. Maybe they won't want it, but I at least want them to know why this was important to me. I was thinking maybe I'll make a keepsake box, or maybe it will turn out to be a dresser or a whole closet. I don't know. And I'll write a note or a letter for the things that are truly meaningful to me. I'll write a little note about why it's meaningful, stick it on that item, and it can kind of be like a box of surprises in a way for them when they are going through my things. Oh, here's this one box. This is the important stuff. Everything else in the house, we can just get rid of. We'll just get somebody to come and haul everything else off because mom separated out the things that really matter. So I was thinking that could be really helpful to them.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that personal story. I think about that as well. I think about that in terms of my parents and their belongings and their two separate households of belongings. I think about my husband, my in-laws and their belongings. And I think, my goodness, like, this is going to be someone's responsibility at some point. So then I, point the spotlight on myself. And I think about that too. And boy, how easily do we accumulate things? And some of these things are treasures. Absolutely. I mean, my whole casket bookshelf is full of treasures I have, and I describe it as part of the Memento Mori section in the book. But I have some really important photographs, I have some cards from people, I have some special homemade gifts, I have books that I love from my childhood, books that I use in my doula work. I've got a whole stack of books for vigil sitting. I have scrapbooks that I've made, my death journals on there, and some seashells from trips, things like that are treasures. And they're not terribly valuable monetarily, but they're meaningful to me. And so thinking about, my basement, thinking about at intervals, making sure to go through and sort of clean and clear out what I don't need, what doesn't serve me, what doesn't bring me joy, what I don't feel like I have a strong connection to. And in the same moment, think about, who else could use these things, who could benefit from them, whether they're people I know and I'm directly connected with or not. How can I share these in a way where other people could get use out of them instead of them just sort of sitting and not being used? And I think in that way, it also tends to encourage us to try to not accumulate quite so much, so that we don't have to sort out our belongings and it be such an undertaking. So thank you for sharing that. And I love the idea of having a chest full of surprises for your loved ones, and then those special notes, because it's one thing to sort of keep something and have someone in mind, but it's another to write a special note, document the backstory, and let people know, why it is that it has meant something to you and why you think it might mean something to them, to at least learn about it, if not be gifted that.
It's so true, because that's something I discovered going through my mom's things. Because I would see something that obviously, because of the way she stored it and kept it, it meant something to her, but I didn't know the story. I didn't know why. And I had so much curiosity, and I wished I knew. And I really didn't know. What should I keep? What should I give away? I didn't know. And that felt like a really big responsibility on my shoulders at that time. Though also, the process of going through a loved one's things, I found it to be helpful with my grief in certain moments when I didn't feel overwhelmed by too much stuff. It could be helpful. So I want to be aware of that it actually is a good way to process loss and grief if you don't leave your loved ones too much that, that just overwhelms them and becomes a burden. It's kind of lovely to go through the things that someone else cherished and be able to hold them and look at them and know the story.
Yeah, those pieces of your life, really, and that reflect the different decades that you've lived and the different relationships, the different careers, the different moments. In the book, I really do talk about with the decluttering, it's not about clearing everything out. It's not about becoming a minimalist necessarily, unless that's where you feel drawn. It's about really mindfully choosing to keep things because you feel a strong connection to them for some reason, or because they're very useful, or because they're very beautiful, because you love having them around, or because you are choosing to keep them for other people. So it's really about that mindfulness and that intention behind keeping.
And another
And then
practice
otherwise releasing.
Another practice I'm really drawn to that I hadn't thought of before, you had down words to grieve by. And I just love the idea because over the years, I've gathered so many beautiful poems and songs and stories about grief just through the work that I've done, and thinking, wow, I would love to make just a book or a scrapbook for my family that contains some of these beautiful words that I've discovered from others that are all on my computer stored somewhere, but to have it there for them when they're grieving as a way of comforting them, and to think these are the words I would say to you if I were here and I could say this to you to comfort you in your grief. This is what I would say and what I would share with you. I loved that idea in the book.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the closing exercises, one of the final prompts. And by that point, I'm being a little more open with how someone might choose to complete them. So there are lots of instructions, lots of tips for even, mindset and your inner wellness, and breath work, and a word that you kind of breathe through your heart. So lots of that scaffolding in the beginning. And then by the end, I have a whole lot of trust in the reader at that point to sort of sit with a wide open prompt like that, words to grieve by, and then decide, what does that mean for me, and what would I want to leave to other people, whether it's a specific loved one, a group of loved ones, or the community, the world. It can be broad, it can be narrow. And so I give a lot of wiggle room by the end of the workbook. Thank you for bringing that up. Starting to read through the chat a little bit, and I love that people are sharing what they do and sharing some links. That is wonderful. Such good work across the world and within the death care field. It's amazing. And some feedback about what we're talking about, like jewelry being passed on. That's so beautiful. So thank you, everyone, for sharing. I want to, if you have questions, now would be a great time to pop them in the chat. We have about 5 more minutes. I do want to let you know about a file that I really appreciate from Dr. Wyatt. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. See if I can find it. I feel like I've really been working my growing edges in terms of technology here. Here we go. It's one. Okay. Can you see this being shared? The 7 lessons workbook, is that popping up?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So let me bring it down so that it's a little more visible. So this is a beautiful offering that Karen had gifted to me as part of my pre-order campaign. Drop it in the chat if you've already gotten your thank you bundle. I know many of you have, and hopefully you've been enjoying it. And this is one of the features of that. So anyone who has pre-ordered the Death Doula's Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared has been able to claim their thank you bundle on my website in the book page, which I can link if needed. But it's on my website, francescalynnarnoldy.com. And so this is one of the 10 thank you gifts that people have received, because I really do love lifting up different voices and knowing that all of our perspectives and the way that we approach this work are just so much more powerful when we're united. So I just want to give Karen a minute to kind of talk about it, and I'll try to scan through the pages while you do that.
Yeah, this was the work, the book, 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying, is what came out of my years of hospice work. And I was describing before that it really inspired me to want to change how I lived my life now by seeing what people were concerned about as they were dying and what they focused on, and just listening to them tell me things they wish they had learned or incorporated in their life earlier in life, instead of waiting until the very end. And so over the years, as I worked with more and more patients, I kept hearing some of the same recurring stories and themes about people's concerns at the end of life. And in my mind, they started all coming together as these 7 lessons that I was learning from my patients. And then ultimately, I went on to write a book about that. And so I wanted to share the lessons as a form of self-care, because it's become clear to me in my own life that one of the things I'm really bad at is taking care of myself. And that I came here with this, I guess, this heart of a caregiver and a caretaker for others, but have not ever in my life been very good at really noticing what I need or taking care of me. So I decided, what if I write this workbook from the point of view that, oh, this is what I need to do to care for myself, and how I need to be taking care of me in order to help other people and take care of other people. So I thought of the idea of the workbook as something that I have kind of needed all along. The whole time I've been doing hospice work are just reminders of how to take care of me and how to look at what I need to make sure I'm as healthy as I can be, and have the right mindset and just in the right place emotionally and spiritually to be able to work with other people.
Thank you so much for sharing about that. And it's really beautifully designed and simple. I mean, in the sense that it's beneficial, and it's not terribly complex to integrate, which I think we need. I mean, we need to be told, okay, these are your list of ideas, and here's what you can choose from, and then here's how you can implement them, and here's some different practice options. So thank you so much for adding this to the awesome bundle. And there are tons of lessons. So if you haven't already gotten your bundle, make sure you do, because this is part of it. And it's just beautiful. And things that you can print off and cut out and sort of leave around you as visuals. And it's just really packed. So thank you for that again. And I want to
You're so welcome. It was actually really fun to create. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, so, okay, so some people don't have the thank you bundle. Some people do have it, and anybody who has pre-ordered it anywhere can get the bundle. So just go to my website and you'll see right on my homepage that I think it says the big news, and talks about the book, and it says something about a thank you bundle, and you can click it right there. So it's FrancescaLynnArnoldi.com right on the homepage. And that thank you bundle will be available just for this week. I'm going to close it down on the 1st when the book officially launches. So thank you all for that. And we are at 12:30. So I want to respect our time and respect your time, Karen, and thank everybody for coming. It was so fun to gather and to have you, and to continue to learn from you and to grow with you, Karen, and all of you out there that are doing such amazing work. I'm so appreciative of your efforts, and together we can make this a movement that's going to reach so many more people. So I hope that you will continue to join me for these little mini sessions. They're 30 minutes, and I've got 3 more amazing, incredible, fascinating guests coming up for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then a solo session coming up on Friday. And I will do a book giveaway. So even if you've gotten a book, it's a book bundle of 3 signed copies of my books that I will mail out to a lucky winner in the US. But otherwise, I just want to thank you again. This is being recorded, so it will show up on Facebook, and then I will also upload it onto my YouTube channel and I will share it with people. So thank you all and take good care.
Thank you, Francesca. Good luck with your beautiful book.
Thank you so much.